Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. Welcome back to the Women's Vibrancy Code. So thrilled for this conversation today. I have Lisa Manyon with me today, who wrote Spiritual Sugar, and we're going to be talking about health, healing, love, mindset, nutrition. She will be sharing a bit about her journey healing her cancer diagnosis with love, as well as a few other pretty phenomenal changes that she decided to implement. So let me read Lisa's bio, and then we're going to get the show on the road. Lisa, anything you want to add before I read your bio?
I'm just really delighted to be here, and I hope that people find this inspiring. That's what we're all here to do, is to uplift one another.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Lisa Manyon is the author of the #1 international best-selling book, Spiritual Sugar, host of the podcast Your Message Matters, and president of Right On Creative, and known as the business marketing architect. She teaches, trains, and transforms via her philosophies for marketing with integrity and methodologies about healing with love. She pioneered the values-based challenge solution invitation communication framework, which I don't know if we're going to be talking about that today, but I'm curious. And the way that that's written is a really creative way of writing it. Lisa's content strategy plans are known to create $1 million results. She's a cancer thriver and offers in-house employee wellness retreats. Lisa currently lives in magical Ashland, Oregon. And more you can see right on creative.com and spiritualsugar.com. And there's also the link directly to her book. Fun story is that Lisa and I actually met in person at it was a women's entrepreneur meetup. And I don't know about you, Lisa, but that evening, it was a little bit awkward. Like there was no structure. It was just space for women to kind of roam around and have a drink and maybe spark conversation. And for Lisa's energy, I gravitated. And I think in that evening, I probably spent the most amount of time with you. And I'm just fascinated by many things. So welcome, and looking forward to our conversation.
I'm so glad to be here, and it's good to see you again. And yes, it was really great to connect with you at that event. It's, I always feel that things happen in perfect time.
Yeah, they do. I'm in agreement. And I haven't listened to your podcast yet, but I'll have to. And for those of you listening in the podcast, you're obviously on the platform. You might want to take a peek at hers. Okay, so I wrote down a few notes and you sent in some questions. As I was reading through the book, I was saying to you before I pushed record, I've interviewed others on the podcast and haven't, necessarily read their book. With yours, I really enjoyed perusing through and the journal prompts that were given. And so just to say out loud for those that are listening, once again, you're now cancer-free since August of 2022. Is that true?
Yeah, for the diagnosis of the base of tongue cancer that I had, in medical terms, after you have been, there's been no evidence of disease for 5 years, then you are deemed cured of that specific cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty exciting. And, every milestone is very emotional. Facing mortality is definitely not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, facing mortality is not for the faint of heart. That was one of the big things that I thought about as I read the book. In your scenario, you were given a diagnosis and had to look mortality direct in the mirror. And so there was a lot of motivation to make all the diet modifications, remove sugar and coffee and cheese and processed foods and add in more fruits and vegetables and all the energy modalities and purifying your water and all the cleaning up of toxins. There was a lot of motivation intrinsically.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm
You know,
curious right up front for those that are listening that maybe they're just feeling a little tired or they're not sleeping so well or they're having aches and pains or they just feel unfulfilled, they feel sad, they feel anxious, and not necessarily facing mortality in the mirror. Where does the motivation come from? Where did the motivation come from for you to make so many changes? And what do you say to the people that you speak to that maybe don't have that scary diagnosis, but to help them motivate to make these changes now?
that is such a good question. And really, my intent, this book is truly my love letter to humanity. And my intent is to inspire predominantly women, but all people. Men are gravitating to the book too, which was a little surprising to me because I've worked primarily with women in general. But what I want to do is inspire people to take such good care of themselves now that they never have to face a cancer diagnosis, because cancer is not necessarily hereditary. It's actually something that has been created within our bodies because we're not doing the things that we should be doing to really fuel our body, eating pure foods, doing all of these things. So my motivation clearly was I wanted to stay alive. I was not prepared to leave the planet. I did have kind of a peaceful calm around it though, because I had lots of conversations with the creator and was very thankful for life. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, if this is it, this is really it. But one of the questions I had for myself is, like, did I kill myself for this? What is this? And is my body really giving out on me now? And the truth is, I liked a lot of things and I still love some of these things. I joke that I quit my 4 favorite food groups, which you talked about, coffee, wine, chocolate, and cheese, and then eliminating all processed food on top of that and all processed sugar was huge. It was challenging and it's not easy. I want people to really be gentle with themselves when they start making these changes, because it's not easy. Everywhere you go, you're being offered, hey, let's have a charcuterie board and a glass of wine, or, a quick packaged meal that is processed and really not good for you. There's all of these things. So my motivation was truly to stay alive and to be the healthiest, best version of myself possible. And I think for anyone listening who is experiencing anything that is troubling in their life, and let's just face it, the past several years have caused a lot of collective PTSD for all of us, whether we're acknowledging it or not, or even realizing it. It's even if it's just on a deep subconscious level. So it's really time to slow down and take good care of ourselves. And none of the other stuff really matters, because if we're not here, and I know you probably heard the saying a million times, but we cannot give from an empty cup. We really just can't.
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask up front. So the book, the foreword is written by Joe Vitale, and you talk about significant time with Neil Donald Walsh.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know those names, like, that's significant. And I'm taking a leap where we're talking about nutrition, but right into, like, what was it I wrote down that you had said? 9 factors that people who have successfully healed cancer have in common. 7 are mostly spiritual. So meaning, of the 9 things that those with cancer diagnosis have in common, 7 of them don't relate to nutrition. So of course I want to talk to you more in the midst of this interview around nutrition, but of the things that people have in common, 7 out of 9 are spiritual and mindset in nature. So how did you get connected with Neil and with Joe? And tell us a little bit of the story there.
Sure. So I guess a little bit of the backstory. I was given the title of the book and this mission 2 years prior to receiving the diagnosis.
Yeah.
So in 2015, I really started digging in deeper to my spirituality in many levels. And I actually received a little download that I was supposed to go to a Conversations with God study group. And honestly, I had never read Neil's books at that time. I'm just being fully transparent. So I Googled it, and he lives in Ashland. And so he was hosting some really beautiful conversations about his books. And I was really curious. And as I dug into his body of work, which is vast and profound, it really resonated in many, many ways for me. And, he then gifted the people who were coming one of his spiritual retreats, a 3-day retreat. And I have to tell you that he is masterful in how he and the team hold people in absolute love in these events, because things come up, emotions come up. And I know you and I have both been to lots of different events, and I had never seen such care taken to make sure if someone was having a meltdown, there were trained professionals and therapists on hand to take care of them. So we kind of continued our relationship through that, just a friendship. And he was at a local tea house that's now closed, but this was kind of right as the pandemic was setting
it the
in.
Beanery?
No, it was I think it was something like Gong Fu Dragon Tea
Oh,
House.
I don't know.
So
Okay.
yeah, no, a different one. But I went because I specifically wanted to talk to him about his process of having these conversations with God, because I get these downloads and I've always been very tapped in, and I haven't always embraced it. It kind of freaked me out a little bit to begin with, just straight up. And so I wanted to ask him, how does that process work? And do you have to go through some big major life change like I did in order to be doing this kind of work and helping people? And he laughed and he said, you do not have to go through anything like this, Lisa. Some people just need to be hit upside the head with a proverbial 2x4. And so I told him the story, and he basically on the spot said, don't you dare not write the book that you're thinking about writing. I want you to set a date. I want it done. And afterwards I went and talked to him, and I asked him if he would be willing to be a part of it after the fact. And he said he'd take a look at it, and if he liked it, he would. And so that's how that happened. And I think the message in there is, if you don't ask, you're not going to get where you want to be. So I was no, worse off or better off for asking. Well, actually better off, because yes, he's a big part of it. And his work has just touched me profoundly. So there's that piece of it. And then Joe Vitale is someone who I've, actually both of these gentlemen have been on my radar for a very long time, because they were both in the movie The Secret many, many years ago. And so kind of full circle, when I watched that movie, I never imagined that I would be sitting here today talking to you about a #1 international bestseller with these cool bookends of two icons that were in The Secret. But my dear friend Lisa Winston, her partner is Joe Vitale, and she was one of my advanced praise readers. And so she had it and was reading it at the dinner table and shared it with him. And it all happened very naturally and organically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he read it and he was like, yes, this has to get out there. And it just worked out so beautifully. And I'm so honored to have those endorsements. I cried when I read both of them. Honestly, I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing.
And special, and speaks to the validation of the message that needs to get out into the world. And it sounds like you've done marketing and some copywriting. So what is it that you do professionally? And
Yeah.
and I imagine there's a link here of you wanting to do good work out in the world and impact lives. And I imagine there's a couple prongs to the way in which that's happening.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. So my main business is Right On Creative, and I have been teaching, training, and transforming in the marketing, advertising, and copywriting space for almost 2 decades through Right On Creative. And I pioneered, you alluded to it in my bio, I pioneered a communication framework called the Challenge, Solution, and Invitation Framework. And it's designed to help people create marketing messages with integrity, with a focus on passion points. So everyone's focusing on pain, and it's just antiquated. So I flipped the script on that and amplify that vibration by actually telling people that marketing is truly all about relationships, and everything you're writing is a love letter to your clients. So there is definitely a correlation there. I mean, so now two main core topics that I play with are, marketing with integrity and healing with love. And they do go hand in hand. In fact, someone told me people have been waiting for my marketing book, which will likely come out at some point, but this was much bigger in many ways. And people have read the book and said, oh my gosh, you basically use the same philosophies that you use in business to heal yourself. And I said, pretty much, because people are people, not numbers. And we can, when we put our mind to it, change everything, and our cells hear us, so we need to be nice to them. We need to be nice to our bodies. I mean, if you listen to Bruce Lipton or any of the greats that are into quantum physics and all of that, then we know that these things are possible. So there is a correlation. They are separate but very much related.
It's making me think of, there's this point, I'm trying to find the spot in the book where you give this laundry list of all of the possibilities of ways to address our healing. It's where is it? I love you bring in forest bathing. I know as Shinrin Yoku and sound healing. So when you talk about the vibration of our thoughts, how you bring that in. So listen to this laundry list that she gives. For those of you that have the book, it's on page 83. Sound healing, music, acupuncture and acupressure, aromatherapy, essential oils, massage, hugs, journaling, float tanks, meditation, prayer, alignment of your internal trinity, timeline hypnotherapy, chakra clearing, cord cutting, toning, meridian alignment, scalar energy, inner child healing work, energetic clearing sessions, energy healing sessions, breathwork ceremonies, tapping, theta healing, self-love rituals, absolute belief that you can heal with love, future activating, pre-paving, envisioning, spending time in nature, earthing, drinking pure water, and eating pure food. Holy macaroni. And so you've incorporated and utilized all of these.
I have, not all at the same time. I probably should have put a little disclaimer in the book, because people are like, wow, that's a lot. I'm like, yeah, I tried them all. And then I utilize the ones that really stuck with me to continue, maintenance and ongoing improvement in my health. And I'm on this journey with everyone else. I don't have it all dialed in. These are things that I did. I, have to course correct. Sometimes I'll have a glass of wine and some cheese and realize, oh, that wasn't probably the best idea. But, we're all human. We're here having a human experience. And those are all of the spiritual tools that I tapped into. And the book basically lays it out for you. There's the awakening, which is my personal journal prompts and kind of the journey that I had to deal with going through Western medicine and choosing not to do chemo and radiation and all these things. And then there's the spiritual tools, which is, as you just gave the laundry list, there's over 30 non-traditional modalities that are actually ancient wisdom, right? That we just need to incorporate back in our lives to do the things that we need to do. And then the final part is embodying spiritual sugar. And I talk about the 7 spiritual sugar principles that you can fortify in order to be healthier. And again, maybe we're not going to focus on all of these things at once, but focusing, like grabbing one of the principles, whether it's your health or whether it's your spirituality or whatever it might be, and focusing on that, and maybe grabbing a couple of those spiritual tools. Don't try and do them all at once, and just making small changes, because those small changes will make really big impact.
And I just keep thinking at the beginning of the story, when you talk about the move from Idaho to Ashland, Oregon, and the name of the book having come to you a couple years before the actual diagnosis, and having not even read Neil Donald Walsh's books, and just looking at the trajectory. If you look back at you in Idaho, what were you a completely different person? Was it like a standard American diet? No affinity towards exploring mindset and spirituality? I mean, are we talking about this huge change for you, or was there always some curiosity or inclination in that direction?
Good question. I've always been highly, highly spiritual. In fact, this is really cute. One of my dear friends in Idaho just sent me some pictures of these vision boards that I had my goddaughters make when they were much younger, that she'd saved for them. I had completely forgotten about them. And she's like, look what you had the girls do. And it was just super cute. So yes, I've always been very, very tapped in spiritually, but it continues to be strengthened. My diet while I lived in Idaho, I tried to eat relatively healthy, but honestly, I was doing processed foods, lots of meat and potatoes. Not that there's anything wrong with meat, but I highly recommend organic grass-fed, beef. Actually, grass-fed and grass-finished, there's a difference. And this is where we kind of talk a little bit about labels, right? You want to read your labels and understand what that means. If it just says grass-fed, that means it could be finished prior to being prepared with grains, which are often full of GMOs and things that aren't great for you. So our labeling system is not 100% accurate on our food either. And I honestly didn't know that much about nutrition. I thought I was being healthy, but we're not really taught how to succeed and be healthy in this society. And this will sound funny coming from a marketer, but everything is put into this shiny, pretty package, so you'll buy it. And it's not always, what you receive is not always what you think you're receiving.
Nor are physicians even educated about nutrition. I mean, you mentioned it in the book. What I've been taught is only 1/3 of physicians graduate from med school having taken one nutrition class. I did a 3-year nurse practitioner program at Yale with one nutrition class in the midst of 3 years. Like, it's not just that we as the consumers aren't taught, the quote
Right.
unquote experts in a Western medicine space that we're going to ask the questions also aren't taught.
That's 100% true. I mean, I had someone on my healing team in the medical profession who did not even believe that sugar feeds cancer. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of research that substantiates that. And so we have to look at the fact that doctors stay in their own lane. They've been taught really wonderful things about, Western medicine and those procedures. But again, like you mentioned, very few have any nutritional background or training. They don't understand that fruits and vegetables can actually heal. And it's really not their fault. It's the fault of the entire system. And the
Mhm.
system is not set up to really support our success on all levels. And it's easy to get upset with individual doctors. And I always have to remind myself, they know what they know. They're human, and they are the product of a system that is virtually broken in many, many ways.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you point out the importance of self-advocacy in the midst of this journey. And even, for you to have gone to see your nurse practitioner multiple times, having been told maybe it's a tooth abscess, and
Right.
then that provider asking you, do you think it could be cancer? Like,
Yeah,
I imagine in the midst of your journey, forgiveness work has been part of it. I'm
it had to be.
curious.
It had to be, because I could easily have latched on to the anger and disappointment around that. But here's what I learned from all of that is, we give our power away to experts because we think they know better than we do about our body, and that's 100% not true.
Mhm.
So we really need to tap into our body and listen. And if I hadn't have listened, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And
Yeah.
I was quite irritated and slightly furious when I was asked if I thought I had cancer, because I thought it was, first of all, negligent. A small thing like never going to medical school precluded me from being the expert in this situation.
Right.
Just a few things there. So yeah, I did. It would have been easy. I think sometimes our ego wants to latch onto things to try and make a situation better or to make sense of things. So I could have been really super angry with that woman. And I was disappointed and I was a bit angry, but I realized, again, she's a product of the system that she was trained within. And many doctors are only allowed like 6 to 8 minutes to spend with their patients. So how do you really expect them to get to know you or to understand what's going on with you?
Yeah. That was my thought as I was listening to you. I had a flashback to moments when I was working in brick and mortar. I ran the women's health and federally funded clinics, in private practices and functional medicine practices. And, in a good scenario, I had 20 minutes for an initial visit. Maybe it was 40, but that's my time to get to know them, ask my questions, answer their questions, have them get undressed, do an exam if that's going to be part of it, plus do all my charting, get ready for the next appointment. And that is best case scenario. You're saying average amount of time is 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we have to go back to, okay, what is my expectation of this space, and seeing this person as an expert? Where am I in self-advocacy? And how can I think outside the box? And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the program that I've designed, is we can bring together time and space where there is expansiveness to ask questions and be in a community and be held in a multidisciplinary approach. And it sounds like you found your own way. Luckily, you happen to live in a community where it's just like boiling over with energy healers.
It's
We're
so
both in
true.
Ashland, Oregon. It's like, I was Gary Zukov and Neil, like at his birthday and music and I don't know. I could think of so many healers that are in Ashland.
Yeah, Jean Houston is here. There's quite a few. There's quite a
Yeah.
few. And it's really a beautiful place. And you're absolutely right. I'm really lucky to live where I live. You as well, because we have these beautiful farmers markets with fresh organic produce.
Hmm.
We have really great co-ops that are full of organic produce. We have healers all over the place, and we have nature. And that's
Yeah.
a big part of the healing journey too. And many people feel like they can't get out into nature. And one of the things that I always say about that is there's a park in every city. Go to your
Yeah.
park, take your shoes off, stand in the grass, connect
Hmm.
to the earth. It's really important. It's a big part of the healing journey.
I want to make sure everyone hears that. So truly, truly, to actually barefoot walk, there's science behind it, my friends. Get your feet on soil if you can, even on sand if you're near the beach. And so you and I live in this community where there's a plethora of spectacular food. The restaurants, the grocery stores, the farmers markets, there's a plethora of access to both Western medicine providers as well as acupuncturists and naturopaths and energetic healers. What do you say to the individuals that are listening to this and they don't, maybe they live in a very remote space where they don't have access? And now the good news is we have virtual options. But what do you say to people if, the only grocery store is Walmart and maybe they don't live in a community where they know where to access support?
Absolutely. So even at Walmart, you can get pure food. You don't have to buy the packaged stuff. And I think one of the things that I really want to address is many people believe that if you start eating organically and eating healthy, that it's going to cost more money. That's not necessarily true. The expense is your time. And so you
Mhm.
have to look at the trade-off. Is it worth it to slow down and prepare your meals in a really beautiful way, to make a salad instead of eating, pizza out or whatever it might be? And don't get me wrong, I love pizza and I still have it every once in a while, but you have to find a happy medium, but there are ways that you can do this. And the same thing with getting out into nature. People say, I can't do that. Like I said, we'll go to the park. And then
Mhm.
when it comes to the non-traditional healing modalities, yes, we have the internet. YouTube has all kinds of information on there, even if you cannot invest in a practitioner to do mobile sessions or remote sessions. And you can also go to your local library. And I am a huge proponent of libraries. I think that you should absolutely check into your local library, utilize the tools there. You can borrow computers there if you don't have computer access. So people like to make excuses. And I'm
Mm.
not saying that budget isn't a thing. I know that it's a thing, that's part of what I talked about in the journey as well. Really looking at wealth. And I'm still looking at that and still rebuilding, because the things that we do to make ourselves healthy are not necessarily covered by insurance.
Right.
So we have to look at our priorities and how we're going to prioritize our spending and how we really want to show up in the world. And if we really want to fuel ourselves with things that are positive.
Yeah. There was one part in the book, I think what you said something like, um, there was a quote around you're never, the cost of a diagnosis like this is going to be so much more than you expect.
Yes. Yes.
And it also, what you were just saying brings me back when there's individuals making excuses, or if you're listening to this and you're going right to all the things, oh, well, I couldn't do that and that's too hard. Underneath that is often stories of confidence and I'm not enough and worthiness. And
Absolutely.
so I think about, I had written this down when I was kind of preparing for our time together, and it was around enoughness. So um, gift may be simply being you because you're enough. You wrote, your gift may be simply being you because you're enough. And to speak to the successful individuals out there that are driven and fighting for worthiness and busy trying to produce, but not maybe foundationally confident and worthy enough to be able to say, I'm enough and I'm going to stop making excuses and actually address my foundational well-being. I'm curious what thoughts you have around that.
Well, it's all about committing to ourselves. And worthiness was an issue that I came up against big time when facing mortality. And just realizing that, when I ask myself the question, did I kill myself for this? It's because I've always been that driven type A person who if someone tells me it can't be done, it will be done, right? Just to prove myself. I don't have to prove myself to anyone, right? For some reason, there's core wounds inside of each of us that if not addressed, we look for those things outside of ourselves instead of just realizing like just being is a gift and just showing up is a gift. And we don't have to do all these different things to prove ourselves. And once we let go of the egoic factors that drive us, which isn't easy either, and it's an ongoing thing, then we can really tap into that and just be more confident and have more flow. I look back at how I would present and how I would show up prior to facing mortality. And there was more of a frenetic energy to me. I mean, I wasn't super spastic or anything, but I could just feel it and see it. And now I'm just, in my truth, and this is who I am. And there's two things that I speak on, and I'm super confident about it because I know it's helping people. And I think we can all get there. But one of the things around worthiness that I think is also really, really notable is I actually felt guilt and shame for ever getting sick. And that's it's a vulnerable share. I wrote about it in the book, but it's really true. I was like, I'm not supposed to be touched by these things. I'm supposed to be this, powerful business person that can do all of these things. And now I'm like going to possibly be taken out by cancer. Really? So again, it was a choice point, and it was a choice point to commit to me and realize like I am worth this. And if we don't take those steps to nourish ourselves and to fortify our own worthiness, for lack of a better term, no one else is going to do it for us. If we're looking outside of ourselves, which I am going to say, full transparency, I did for a very, very long time.
It also makes me think of a client of mine. She's in the Women's Vibrancy Code, and she's a 2-time survivor of breast cancer. And for her, we ordered a GI map to look at her gut microbiome, and reviewing it, looking at the actual numbers and the quantifiable inflammation that showed up in her body in various ways that we were looking, and finally realizing that for her scenario, gluten was part of what was really hurting her. And she broke down in tears of these feelings of guilt and shame. Like what I heard from her is, I'm a 2-time survivor of breast cancer. She also survived a stroke after she got the COVID vaccine. She ended up with a stroke. And
oh my gosh.
And the challenges that she's been through, and to look at actual quantifiable labs, then she's saying, have I been causing this to myself? And so we go into forgiveness. We go into addressing the guilt and shame that might show up, and at the same time take steps. And so when you think back to the guilt and shame that reared its nasty head, I'm assuming that you looked it direct in the face, and then you talk about the courage to change, that you talk about that it's uncomfortable, and human nature is to be drawn to the familiar. And so I'm curious, what propelled you to move through the guilt and shame and to move into self-advocacy and be willing to actually change?
I'm always fascinated with what motivates me as an individual. So I looked at that and I found it fascinating. I was like, oh, wow. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, why am I feeling guilt and shame around this? I'm just human. But it's, again, all of these constructs and all of these unrealistic expectations that society puts on us to overachieve, to do all of these things. And some of them we put on ourselves. It doesn't make any of it easy. So it was again, a choice point. I talk about choice points a lot. It was either I make these changes and I know that we are capable of healing our bodies, or I succumbed to the fear. And I think this is a really important point. If I would have rolled into the fear of the diagnosis that I received, it's quite possible that I would not be here today. Because again, our cells hear what we have to say. Most people, when they get a diagnosis of cancer, we've been programmed to believe that that's an automatic death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not true. So if we flip that script and we roll into the vibration and the vibrancy of love, then we can heal all. I do believe that with all of my heart. And so it wasn't easy. And, you know, it became difficult socially as well. I'm just going to be really, really clear. Sometimes you have to let go of people that are not going to be moving forward with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of my friends wanted to go, hey, let's go have a shot of whiskey or a drink. And I'm like, I'm going to go have some green juice and a wheatgrass shot. You know, it's not, it's a different vibe and
Yeah.
it's a different choice.
And especially when what I understand is you kept your community so close and tight, and you did not share with very many what you were going through. And
Right.
so on one hand, there's this cultural disconnect where you're changing and the people that you're accustomed to being around aren't meeting you with that change. And I imagine that many of those people, you weren't even sharing with them what was happening behind the scenes. They're just seeing Lisa like jumping off the cliff and having some midlife crisis and like, where's the Lisa that I know? So that's
Yeah.
confronting in multiple ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's not easy. I'm not going to ever say that it is, but it's worth it. It's really
Hmm.
worth it. And I'm going to be fully transparent. I sometimes get off track. I have to course correct. That's why I say I'm on this journey with everyone. I'm human. I'm not untouchable. You know, I started eating processed food a little more than I should. I started enjoying a few more glasses of wine than I should. So I'm in the process of getting back into my juicing. I'm in the process of doing all of these things that are really important. And it takes ongoing effort. And I think that's a really important point because
Yeah.
we can slip back into our old habits easily, even after letting go of them for a long period of
Hmm.
time.
Well, and then you're facing potentially self-judgment of, why did I not stick with this?
Absolutely.
And the potential of external judgment from those same friends or community that used to be, and now, oh, now she's not even sticking with it. I saw her at the bar drinking a drink.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, as you were talk a little bit about what you shared in the book regarding um, really narrowing in your community, and why did you make those choices, and how did you choose the individuals that you would share your journey with?
Sure. So I think it's really important that we all have a sacred sphere of influence. That's what I call it. And they're
Hmm.
basically your ride or die people. They're going to be with you no matter what. And even if they don't understand the choices that you're making, which is true of many of the people within my sacred sphere of influence. I mean, some of my friends think I'm absolutely nuts. They'll pop by to visit and they see singing bowls and crystals and, you know, different things around and they're like, what are you even doing? And so
Hmm.
it was all really based on love and trust. Bottom line, you know, my nuclear family, my mom and my dad were of course there for me every step of the way. And I don't have brothers or sisters, but I have a lot of really close friends who are like family, brothers and sisters. And they were privy to all of this. And also, you know, longtime friends that are not going to go anywhere no matter what changes we make. We just roll with it and say, okay, interesting. This is what you're doing now. Still
Hmm.
love you. Um, were a big part of it, as well as strengthening newer relationships with my friends who are healers and such, right?
Hmm.
Because I needed people in that sacred sphere of influence who believed with me that I was going to heal with love. And it wasn't always easy because sometimes I would have to raise the vibration of some of the people around me because they were being fed mainstream media stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, you've got throat cancer, you know, you're toast. And so I would have to remind them, no, I'm not. I'm not, that's not happening to me. I'm not going to let that happen. And we do have some choice points around that. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not always that easy for everyone, I will say that, but I do believe, I mean, you know, Bruce Lipton talks about this a lot. Our cells hear us, our cells can regenerate and be really positive in our healing
Hmm.
and our growth. And I just listened to a podcast that Jean Houston did an interview with him that was really fascinating, that talked about cancer and healing. So for me, you have to surround yourself with people you can trust and people that are going to uplift your intention to heal. Now, I have a rather large following on social media, but what I do know about social media is not everybody on social media that's following me loves me. So I wasn't going to let them know what was going on with me, because the energy that people project towards you can also impact your healing and moving forward. And it was frankly no one else's business. You know, it was my own personal business. Now I share it because I want it to inspire and motivate others, but it's a conscious choice. And some people thrive on everybody knowing and you know, people weighing in and the chaos of that. But quite frankly, when you receive a diagnosis, everyone becomes an expert. And I did not need to listen to a lot of outside noise. I was tapping in directly to my guidance from source, and I was divinely guided and followed all of those divine threads to every resource that I connected with.
And I'm curious, with the supportive mother and father, I mean, so there's choosing the community that are aligned with the same ideas of divine support and listening into inner guidance. And then there's the people that are part of us and love us simply because we're blood related, such as mother and father. And I imagine there could have been moments where mother and father are like, can't you just do the radiation? Can't you just do the chemo? Can't you just da 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 da?
Yeah, you know, there were some moments, and I remember my dad was really concerned because, you know, they went to the doctor's appointments with me, and I would thoughtfully listen to what was being shared, and then I would thoughtfully disregard what didn't resonate for me. And it made my dad pretty nervous. And I remember I sent him a card that said, you know, Dad, remember, worry is literally a prayer for what you don't want. It's all going to be okay. You know, just focus on this. I can't remember who originally said that quote, or I would completely give them credit. And I remember he told my mom, he got a little teary, and he told my mom, oh my gosh, now I'm worried about worrying.
Right? Worry is a prayer for what you don't want.
Yeah.
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 And so what I'm hearing is that the power of community, the power of food, the power of love and intention and sound and thought and belief. And then you talk about healing cancer with love, love for yourself, love for your family, love for your friends, love for your community, love for the world. Of all of those, which was the most difficult for you?
Oh boy. That's such a good question. I've got to think on that. I I don't know what was most difficult. I mean, I had absolute faith that this was going to happen. Um, I think maybe the biggest challenge there would be love for the world, because it really showed me how fragmented we are as a global community when it comes to healthcare, and when it comes to really doing what's best for people and treating people like people. You know, not just marketing things to them because you can. I mean, even the FDA approves food that isn't actually good for us. And if we start looking at labels, as you know, if you can't pronounce what's on the label, it's probably not good for you. And if you just Google it, like I would challenge everyone to do the label challenge. Like, pull something out of your cupboard that's a processed box or can of something. Look at all the ingredients and just Google them. See what they really are.
Yeah.
See what they're really doing to your body.
Right. So to feel the contrast in the world
Yeah.
and to still love the world for what it is, and to surround yourself with individuals that you knew there was exchange of love and light, and also love the contrast with what else is what else is showing up in the world, not to mention in the midst of a pandemic and
Right.
and a good amount of polarity.
Yes.
And so there's probably been a good amount of love and forgiveness work in the midst of your journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's
I,
ongoing. There's always more layers. I mean, you and I
yeah.
both know that when we're working in the healing space,
Mhm.
everybody hopes that, okay, this next session, I'm going to be completely clear and free of everything. Well, we're kind of like an onion. You peel back layers and there's more and more and more. But the more present you are to what's going on with yourself and with your body, the easier it is and the more skilled you'll become at navigating any of these things that come your way.
Mhm. So good and so important. I was also, I love that you brought in Louise Hay.
Oh, I
And
love her so much.
the quote that really jumped out at me is, remember, you have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, what would be your number one piece of advice to those that are listening that um, just simply want to feel better? Maybe there's some that are listening that have received a diagnosis, and once again, by no means are we giving health advice, and we're not your providers. But maybe they've either been given a diagnosis where they're looking mortality in the face, or they're simply going silent, or kind of robotic, so to speak, living a life that increases the chance of that diagnosis, whether they want to accept it or not. What would you say would be one, like this would be my one piece of advice for those of you that are listening?
Well, my favorite piece of advice is to question everything. And
Mm,
that segues into getting second opinions and also realizing that our doctors are human and they don't understand about nutrition, and nutrition really is that important.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the books that I read when I was going through my journey, and it was kind of my healing Bible, was by Dr. Kelly Turner. It's called Radical Remission. And she's the one that identified those 9 key healing factors. And
Hmm.
now there's 10. She has a new book out called Radical Hope. I haven't read that yet, but it's on my list. And she's identified 10 key factors that will help us thrive. And I recommend, whether you've had a diagnosis of any sort or not, just to read that and see, familiarize yourself with some of these stories that are incredible. And what I find most credible and impressive about Dr. Kelly Turner is she started out as a cancer counselor, and she
Mm,
kept hearing about all of these spontaneous remissions. And she thought, as a critical thinker, this isn't spontaneous. There are some common threads here. So she went back to school and got her PhD in cancer research, did
mm,
all this research, connected the dots, and is now doing this really amazing work in the form of her books and teacher training and certification. And so I would recommend that everyone read that. Of course, I want to read my book too, but that was one of the big inspirations for me. When
yeah.
I looked at it and I saw real tangible stories of people who made these changes, and they had what she now calls radical remissions.
Hmm. And so that sounds like a great book. Spiritual Sugar is a great book. And it also makes me think that we will never know the things that we prevented. It's like, I often give the example of, I brush my teeth every day and I'm a flosser. I floss after every meal, but I don't brush my teeth thinking, oh, it feels so good to not be getting a cavity right now.
Right.
Right? And so for those that are listening, to heed these words of eat more fruits and vegetables, drink purified water, consider taking out processed foods and cheese and coffee and alcohol, and listen to these stories of radical remission that some have experienced, or maybe not. Maybe you don't even want to plant the seed of possibility around cancer diagnosis. And what do we have to lose to simply make better choices with what we put in our mouth? Um, do you think ultimately it's actually more simple than most people think?
I think so. I think so. I think that if we were to really just start with nutrition and eat better, we would not have as many ailments and illnesses
Yeah,
coming our way.
yeah. And I'm hearing question everything in self-advocacy. You know, if you're
Yes.
going to the insurance model healthcare system with short visits and walking away with another prescription Or
Mhm.
another, well, everything looks fine and normal to me, even though you're saying things don't feel normal, to be in that place of self-advocacy and continue to ask the same questions to multiple places. I mean, I can think of one client right now, he had seen 35 different specialists in and
Right.
out of the ER, all the imaging. He thought he was dying. And even one of the specialists said to him, you know what? The healthcare system is really good at diagnosing mountains. When it comes to obscure or nuanced things that are small, that's just not how we're trained. I thought that was really fascinating. And in his scenario, I had one conversation and poof, it was systemic mold. And
Interesting.
and he's on this path of amazing recovery. But once again, 35 different providers. He has
Right.
access to great money, all the top specialists, the naturopaths, the acupuncturists, and he continued to advocate for himself.
And you have to. You have to.
Mhm.
That's such a beautiful illustration of it. I mean, it's both frustrating and beautiful, but don't give up.
Mhm.
If you know in your heart of hearts and soul, and you're feeling in your body that something is off and you're not getting the answers that you want, then keep pushing. Push for
Yeah.
those answers. We do deserve that. And honestly, even though I don't want to point fingers at specific healthcare practitioners, we do need to hold them all accountable. And even though they are working in a very broken system for the most part, it's okay to ask and ask again. And
Mhm.
also, oftentimes you'll find errors in charts and have to have them revisited and revised and fixed.
Yeah.
So, when people are having to rush through because they're working in parameters that probably they're not enjoying either. They got into their professions to help.
Yeah.
And so there has to be, like you mentioned, compassion and forgiveness, but also tenacity on your own part to don't let go. If you feel that thread within you, follow it and get the answers that you deserve.
Hmm. Well, this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you for sharing your journey. My assumption is that you are far out enough from total remission and you feel like you're strong and healthy to now share this with the world via your book, Spiritual Sugar.
Yeah, it was important for me. I released it November 22nd of 22. And that was the year that I was deemed cured of that particular
Hmm.
cancer, right?
Hmm.
So there's never any guarantee. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm going to
Hmm.
continue to do whatever I can to heal with love and to, just be the best version of myself possible.
Yeah. So, for those that are listening and they would like to find you, they would like to reach out to you, what does that look like? And yeah.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. The best way probably is just go to the Spiritual Sugar website at spiritualsugar.com.
Hmm.
There's some free goodies there for people who are interested. And I have a Journey of Awakening audio and some journal prompts. We call those Spiritual Sugar Heart Sparks that are directly
Hmm.
from the book if you just wanted a little taste before purchasing anything. And that's where I will be sharing, interviews like this, things that come up, where I might be speaking, who knows what might happen. I will eventually develop a course. That's not happening yet. So right now, the best thing to do is, get the book, read it, leave reviews. Those are fantastic. Those really help.
Hmm.
And, that's really the best way. And
Great.
follow me on social media. I have a Spiritual Sugar Facebook page and Spiritual Sugar Official on Instagram as well.
Great. And your podcast, once again?
Oh yeah, I have a podcast for Right on Creative called Your Message Matters. So if you want to learn more about the business aspect, definitely go and tune into Your Message Matters, and you'll learn a little bit more about my backstory because I've always been drawn to the written word in marketing and advertising for as long as I can remember. So it's
Mhm.
another divinely guided mission of mine.
Mhm. And you've built quite a successful business for yourself utilizing that.
Yes, absolutely. At 20 years young in October, Right on Creative will be.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so for individuals who are listening and leaning into who you be in the world, and they're looking for support with marketing and creative. Who are your clientele in that world?
I serve mission-driven, multi-passionate entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, including corporate leaders, authors, speakers, and light workers. If you threw them all in a room together, they'd look at each other and say, what in the heck do we even have in common? But they have two core things in common. They're completely turned off by pain point marketing. In fact, pain points are their pain point. They don't want to do any of that manipulative stuff at all. And they just have a desire to make a really big difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as we're aligned in that way, I can help dial in their message and help them package things in a way that can produce some pretty significant results if they carry through with them.
Awesome. So for those that are listening, you have lots of ways to enjoy Lisa's energy and gifts in the world and book Spiritual Sugar. There it is. Voila, for those of you that are watching. And if you, whatever platform you're listening to, if it's in Facebook, please comment down below. Let us know what really jumped out at you. Do you have any questions? If you're listening in one of the podcast platforms, would love a rating and review. You're always welcome to reach out to me if you have additional questions about the Women's Vibrancy Code and the ways in which me and the team offer up very similar approaches to addressing our well-being and our vitality through a multidisciplinary approach. I love how you have a whole section on trauma we didn't even talk about, but to address the role that nutrition plays, the role of really having a place of self-advocacy, the right community that believes in you, the space for, I believe, one thing that I didn't see in the book is for women to really dig into our relationship with our sensuality, our passion, our desire, our sexuality. I think that that is also a factor in our journey of healing, as well as addressing how we think and old trauma to get into that forgiveness work and cut the cord, so to speak. I love that you brought in cord cutting. Okay, we are done. Anything else that you would like to add, Lisa?
No, I love that, but I'm going to add the sensuality and sexuality part to the list of, version 2, because there's so many things I forgot to put in the book. Yeah. And so I'll add that to it as well, because you're absolutely spot on. That's a huge component.
Yeah. For us to actually allow ourselves to desire. Yes. And to make our passion a priority. And I do believe that there's healing when we dig into same thing. These stories of guilt and shame, they often show up in our relationship with our sexuality, our enough-ness, our ability to receive, our ability to express fully. Not to mention a little bit of oxytocin always comes in. It can be pretty helpful. All right. Thank you again.